the Memoirs of Blessed Ramon Llull. Today on The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of St. Joseph. I'm your host, Jim Havens, and our guest today is Jason Gale, Vice President of Content and Production for TAN Books, tanbooks.com. He's here to discuss a new book from TAN, The Memoirs of Blessed Ramon Llull, the first missionary martyr to the Muslims, translated and edited by Father Robert Nixon. Jason Gale, welcome to The Simple Truth. How are you today?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jim. Appreciate it.
Yeah, very grateful to have you on and to talk about this. Now, I read every word of the book. Love learning about new blesseds and saints that I know nothing about, and I had never heard of Blessed Ramon Llull before. And I have noticed here, it took over 500 years after his death for him to be beatified. He ultimately was beatified in 1847 by Pope Blessed Pius IX. Why do you think it took so long for the Church to formally recognize him? And why should Catholics today know his name? And really quickly, one quick word on his name. You find it in some very helpful footnotes in this book. And one of those footnotes early on has a little something to say about his name, just simply saying that various people call him by various types of names here for Raymond or Ramon, Raymond, Ramon, and then his last name, Llull, Lully. You might hear various aspects here, again, in the title of the book, Blessed Ramon Llull, but yeah, various ways you might hear about him. But anyway, Jason, why should Catholics know his name? Why should they know about him?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of reasons, I think for the modern Catholic, when we see what's going on in our own world with the rise of Muslims and the Muslim religion or Islam being spread all over, it's good to go back and to look at the saints that have gone before us. I mean, and I think for Catholics, that should be a principle for everything, no matter what you're doing. Go back and see what the saints have done before us, because 9 times out of 10, they did it better and holier than our minds can even conceive. So a good spiritual practice is to imitate the saints. So, for me, that's one reason, is because, there is a great rise in Islam. And so to go back to Blessed Ramon and to see, how did he live? What was his life like? And we'll get into I think, some really interesting facts and some helpful things for us to remember. The other thing with his life is that he was not just influential to the modern world with regard to trying to evangelize the Saracens, but he also made very practical contributions to. Some would even credit him as to doing kind of some of the first contributions to computer science. So the types of like algorithmic learning. If you Google his name or you look him up on YouTube or something like that, you'll see kind of secular videos about his memory wheel, and he created all different kinds of mnemonic devices to help people remember. Because one of the principal things that he held was that, and it's a very strong position, is that everything in the world can be not just known but memorized. And so this really kind of set a stage for how we wanted to evangelize the Muslims, and really set forth the idea that if we present the faith in a clear and reasonable way, that the mind, with the influence of God's grace, that the mind can grasp the truths of the Catholic faith to the point where it cannot, where the unbelieving mind cannot argue with the logic of the faith. That everything is tied together. The world, the whole world, all of nature, all of supernature are tied together. And when we're presented it with this reason, that the mind can't even argue against it. And so we had a very strong appeal to for us, I think, as evangelizers, if we want to help spread the faith. He was very influential in that.
Yeah, it seems that he really led with trying to simplify, to make it accessible to the Muslims, the Saracens of the time, and others. Really, the doctrine of the Holy Trinity was one thing he really drilled down on, especially the goodness of God as well, and then tried to build things out from there. He did write extensively. That's one of the things that definitely got my attention in reading this. Over 300 titles that are in his name. I don't know how many of those have been translated into English, so I don't know, how many are accessible to us. I've not come across any. I guess I'll ask you that real quick here, Jason. Have you ever read anything else that he's written? I mean, what we have here in this book by Tan, much of it is his writings, the memoir that he dictated himself in September 1311 in Paris, just a few years before his death. And we get a little bit of his writing of his master plan, as he calls it, in the back of the book as well. But with so much that seems so intriguing about what he wrote, have you ever come across anything else that he's written? Do you know how much is out there and translated into English?
No, I really don't. The only thing that I know of is kind of his most famous work, The Great Art, the Ars Magna. This was kind of his way of rationalizing, and this is the rationalizing and memorizing. So how do we, if we create within, let's take the faith, for example, if we create kind of this logical pattern of how do we get from the Trinity to this doctrine of the faith? How do we get from the Trinity to the Immaculate Conception, right? And so he has, but it could also be for anything. It's not just for theology, but his great art was to develop a system, and this is where kind of his contribution of algorithm learning is to develop a system where you can memorize kind of anything and follow the logic from the Trinity to anything. And so especially with the time that he lived, it's the Crusades have been going on for 200 years. It's obviously not working, and so this was kind of really one of his calls was, okay, this isn't working. Like this, the consistent battling with the Muslims is not working. We should try to evangelize them. And so he would look at what do they believe as Muslims, and then say, okay, well, they believe, in some sort of goodness of God. Okay, how do I get to there? How do I begin with there and end at the Trinity? And so this was kind of his big project, was really, to evangelize the Muslims, but also one of the big things he wanted to do was to start schools where we could train, where the headed by popes and cardinals, to train priests to go and to evangelize the Muslims.
Yeah, there seems to be a certain pattern in his life. When you step back and kind of take a look at it, there was he would study, he would write, and this was by God's grace. This is after, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. He really had a big conversion experience and a mystical experience, devoted his life to Christ and to this mission of evangelization. And so part of that was, so he would write, he would lecture, he would travel, he would go and try to talk to the Pope of the time. There were several popes in his time that he would try to talk to, along with the College of Cardinals, and try to get them on board for the mission to see if they would help him. They always refused to help him, sadly. He had people that attacked him, various people that were supposed to be helping him and serving him. We'll get to some of that. And then he would travel and visit the Saracen territories, Muslim territories at times, and try to evangelize. This is one of those examples that we get from the book. This is in chapter 16. He sailed to the Saracen territory, a port city in Algeria, and in this city, he stood up in the central square and boldly proclaimed in a loud voice to all the people there present, "The faith of the Christian is the true faith. holy and acceptable to God. The faith of the Muslims is false and erroneous. This I am prepared to prove to you. And they rushed upon him furiously, intending to stone him to death. And then the imam commanded that he should be brought into his presence, and then he would try to convince the imam, the leader. And various things would take place from there. But he did reply without hesitation to the imam here. The imam asks him, "Surely you are not ignorant that whosoever shall do so must pay with his life," coming here and impugning the law of our Muhammad. And to this Ramon replied without hesitation, "The true servant of Christ who knows the depths of the Catholic faith should not fear the death of his own mortal body when he sees that he has a chance of attaining the eternal life of the Spirit for the souls of all those who accept the true faith he proclaims." End of quote. So, a little bit different method than what we often hear about. But this is, a bold, courageous method of saying, look, I've been blessed to know this. I've been given the grace to understand who Jesus is, what his Catholic Church is, that he died to give me, that I might become a member of it and enter into this sacramental life, to be filled with sanctifying grace, and to go forth, to be on mission with him, to help rescue souls from sin and eternal death. And I'm gonna go forth and do it boldly with great zeal. And this he did, and this is a great example of it. How many would be willing to do this, and how many would even say that this is okay? They would say, well, that seems imprudent or something like that. Well, it seems more than okay to me. I think it seems like a great example of how we ought to proclaim the truth in various contexts. Maybe not everyone, but it is a possibility. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Jason Gale, Vice President of Content and Production for Tan Books. We are discussing the new book from Tan Books, The Memoirs of Blessed Ramon Llull, the first missionary martyr to the Muslims. You can get it at tanbooks.com. That's tanbooks.com. Jason, any thoughts on the missionary methods, the evangelization methods of Blessed Ramon Llull?
Yeah, I think, for a couple of thoughts on that. The first was, he was a man of deep prayer and the sacraments, and he had a very clear understanding of the goal. The goal was to get people to heaven. And one of the things that I think kind of modern evangelizers, and I'm going to kind of make this statement kind of way too simplified, but just for the sake of conversation. But one of the things that he understood is that souls are being lost. Souls are being lost to hell. Souls are being lost to false teaching, and this is what motivated him to spread the gospel. So many times today we don't like to, evangelizers, we don't like to do that. Many times we'll couch our evangelization in, you're missing out on the love of God, kind of a way. Whereas for the majority of the life of the church, the main driver, the main motivation to evangelize was that souls are going to hell, and God has given us a call to help bring souls to Him and thus lead them to heaven. And so our motivation, like Blessed Ramon, should be that there's a lot of souls out there that are being lost, and he's asking us to speak up. He's asking us to have the saints intercede for them. And so I think you can see kind of that the boldness. I wish I had the strength that he did to stand up. And I think the other thing is that, and he knows very clearly, you can see this in the writings, he knows very clearly where this is going to lead. It's martyrdom. And he says in the book, somewhere in there, he says that, the reason why, people aren't out there evangelizing to the Muslims is because they know it will lead to martyrdom. We can't be scared of that.
To even apply that to various relationships that we might have. Maybe it's friends, family, coworkers, whoever it might be that we might be in relationship with, and we try to talk with them. They might be non-Catholic or fallen away Catholics. They might be some other faith like Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or whatever it is. There comes a time to boldly proclaim the truth of it, and to say the faith of the Christian is the true faith, holy and acceptable to God. The faith of the Muslims, in this case, or whatever it is, or your New Age beliefs, are false and erroneous, and this I am prepared to prove to you. So this is the way he enters in this one scenario here. No small talk. He just kind of goes in the central square and proclaims it and says, so who wants to talk about it? And the imam, he gets called into the imam, and that works out real well for his plan. And this is how it goes for him, where, look, he is a man of deep prayer, but also a man of deep study. So he took a lot of time in a prayerful study of the faith. And so the Lord has been able to build him up in the truths of the faith, to equip him to go forth and be able to get into these conversations and convince people. And he's got the logic down. It's very convincing. Yeah. And he's able to convince people, and that gets him into more trouble in a worldly sense. But just to, I guess, make the point for our application for our lives, it might be just to say that if he's willing to lay down his life in such a way in martyrdom, are we willing to just trust God and do what we're called to do, and not be afraid that something's going to happen then in the relationship if I try to go there that is going to ruin the relationship or turn this person off or whatever else, to do it prayerfully, but to do it and to say, I am going to try to talk to this person on a deeper level about the faith and try to draw them home the best I can. And one other thing here, we also see evidence in his method of evangelization to the Muslims, where in a different scenario, he's among them, and it says he's listening with great attention, right? So he really takes the time to listen, to learn the language. Is the other thing that was very innovative of the time. That's what he wanted to start these schools to do, to equip missionaries. And it would part of that study, a big part of it would be to learn the language so you could go and talk with them, and then he would tell them if he says, if I find your arguments, I'm going to listen. And if I find your arguments and explanations to be stronger and more logical than mine, then I'll be ready to convert to your faith. That's how confident he was, that he was willing to talk on that level and really listen and really think it through and help the other person think it through. Jason, your thoughts?
Yeah, and that's a great point for people today. We don't want to come off as harsh, or so we may not say something like, well, I believe that your religion is false. I mean, there was a clip going around social media. I think it was like Father Barron or something like that, where they asked him, so do you think all other religions are false? And he said, yeah. Or do you think your religion is the best? Or it was phrased somehow like that. And he was like, yes. Like, Catholic, we should be proud, but that pride, in a good way, should lead us to be respectful, and that we understand the gift that has been given to us, and we're called to share that gift, but to be bold in the proclamation. Like, if the person you're talking to doesn't understand that what you're giving them is the absolute truth, then they're not going to understand why. What is the value of the thing you're talking about? I have an argument, you have an argument. No. I'm not just trying to provide you with an argument. I'm trying to provide you with the truth. And I will sit here and I will listen to you and I will answer all of your objections. And this was kind of, and this is where kind of the boldness of Blessed Ramon meets the gentleness of the evangelizer, where we're going to make a bold claim. My faith is true, yours is not. That's a bold claim, but I respect you and I respect your beliefs, to where I will sit here and I will listen to them. I will answer all of your objections. If you have better arguments, I'll convert to you. So there is, this, I don't want to say balance, but there's this kind of a twofold approach of be bold. We're not giving away, a Snickers bar. We're giving away, the Catholic faith. We're giving away the truth of salvation, right? Make that bold claim. And then, like he does, learn the language, learn the arguments, learn that to be able to back it up, to be able to guide somebody into the truth.
Yes. Yeah. Jason Gale is with us, tanbooks.com, talking about the memoirs of Blessed Ramon Llull today. You can get it at tanbooks.com, a short volume. It doesn't take that long to read it. Action packed. It's about 126 pages total, the whole thing. And it's a smaller book as well. So again, tanbooks.com is where you can find it. And, he was, Blessed Ramon, he was willing to suffer and die in this mission for the salvation of souls, conversion of sinners, salvation of souls. And he was jailed on multiple occasions and beaten, tortured multiple occasions as well in these Muslim lands where he was. He even, at one point, though, there would always be this kind of quandary about what to do with him, because those in leadership were kind of like, well, this is kind of interesting. And others would say, no, we got to kill him. This guy's dangerous. We got to get rid of him. He's too convincing. And he was convincing people. It does talk about how there were people that desired, after he was conversing in one area, he did lead people to the point where they're like, okay, I'm ready to be baptized. Now, he was a layman himself, a Franciscan tertiary, so third order Franciscan man, but he was not a priest. I don't know. It doesn't say in the book if he actually himself was able to baptize people in, I guess, case of emergency or something. I don't know how that would have worked. I don't know if those baptisms actually took place. It doesn't seem like he traveled with a priest or anything, but he did do what a lay person can do, which is, in ordinary circumstances, right, lead people to the precipice to get them to the point where they say, okay, I'm ready. I desire baptism. That's what we can do. And then we got to bring them to the church, bring them to the priest. Jason, any other thoughts on this?
Yeah. And I think, with he understood the martyrdom aspect, so well as to part of the preaching. And to him, I don't want to say, he was kind of ahead of his time, but it seems to me, reading this, he seems to kind of fall into like that category of, he didn't get a lot of support from anybody. But he talks about, towards the end of the book, he talks about kind of, you get this real kind of insight into kind of his thinking and his motivation, where he says the Catholic faith began through the preaching of the apostles and was then multiplied by sanctity, by the shedding of the blood of the martyrs, by the sheer hard work. Hence, it follows that its continued multiplication and expansion depends upon having missionaries of true sanctity who have the courage to face martyrdom and are ready for tireless toil. Why is it then that we do not see such an expansion? It's because we no longer have men who are willing to face martyrdom for the faith, or preachers or laborers who are filled with such fervent desire as in times past. And so he really has this connection, I think, with understanding his mission being traced all the way back to the beginnings of Christianity, where the faith was very much persecuted, right? You had Diocletian, you had, all of the different emperors that were persecuting Christians. They were dying, and if it wasn't a divine institution, it would have been wiped off the face of the earth. But there were martyrs, there was great preaching, and the church expanded. Now he's seeing, in his day, again, against the backdrop of the Crusades, Islam is spreading, and the continuous crusades are not working. Many of them are failing horribly, and so he says we have to do something different. We have to try to evangelize them. And he does say in the back of the book, yes, we do need to take back the Holy Land. We need to take back those holy sites. But he says we need a change in our tactics. We need to reach out to them, and we need to we need to preach Jesus Christ, and we must be willing to die for that. And that's where he says that's the hard part, is we don't have men of courage anymore.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to get into more when we get back from the break. We'll take you into his conversion story, his initial conversion. Really fascinating. That got my attention right in the beginning of the book in chapter 1. And then also, some of the persecution that he faced. There was an attempted murder at one point, actually on a couple of occasions, of the people that were closest to him, trying to kill him. And so we'll get into that some and much more. So much to get to here. Blessed Ramon Llull. It's a blessing to learn about him. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Jason Gale, VP of Content and Production for Tan Books, talking about the memoirs of Blessed Ramon Llull, the first missionary martyr to the Muslims. Tanbooks.com is where you can find it, tanbooks.com. Right in the beginning of the book, chapter 1, we get a taste of the conversion of Blessed Ramon. And remember, this is him writing his own story here. These are his memoirs. And he writes that he was an officer of the palace of the king, and he was excessively devoted to the vanities and allurements of this passing world in his youth. What happens, though, is that he has this miraculous vision one night, and it's the form of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ raised up as if he was hanging on the cross. And so this terrifies him. Then the next day, though, he shut his eyes and he hides himself in his bed, and he prays earnestly to the Lord for mercy. Then it's the next day, and he's thinking about it again, and he's thinking, that must just been my imagination or something. So this goes on like this night after night. Then he sees the vision again each night. Next morning he wakes up, and so this goes on about five nights in a row. And then he eventually here, he becomes increasingly uneasy and anxious. By the fifth night after the vision of the crucified Christ had appeared to him, he could no longer find refuge in sleep, but spent the whole night tossing and turning. He considered in his mind the meaning of the vision and the way in which it had interrupted and prevented his completion of his song for the woman with whom he was infatuated. What could it mean? And then the conclusion dawned on him. Jesus Christ was calling him to abandon the vanity of the world and the desires of the flesh with which he had been hitherto so occupied, and to devote himself wholeheartedly to the service of the Lord. And then he senses his own unworthiness, like, Peter, depart from me, Lord, I'm a sinful man. So this then comes, and he's like, I can't answer this call. I am not worthy to answer this call. And then he's illuminated with this grace, and then he reflects upon the infinite mercy of God and God's patience and gentleness, the gentleness of Jesus Christ, that he never fails to show to sinners. And then Ramon understood very clearly and certainly that God willed him to renounce the world and to serve the Lord Christ with all his heart for the remainder of his life. So a beautiful conversion story. And this really was convicting. I mean, this convicted him in a very strong way. It was the seed from which everything else would really blossom from. Jason, any thoughts on that chapter? Anything that jumps out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was actually an experience I had when I had just finished reading this part and reading his conversion story. And I came across a clip online, and you can go look it up. It's an interview of a man named Ismail Youssef, and he's a convert from Islam, and he's giving an interview, I think, with like Matt Fradd on Pints with Aquinas or something like that. And this is what totally blew my mind, and I think it's evidence where you can see divine intervention, saintly intervention in real time. So as you just went through, Blessed Ramon has this vision of Jesus Christ crucified for 5 nights and finally converts. So in this interview with this modern day convert from Islam. He's talking about there's actually a lot of Muslims right now converting from Islam to Christianity and then to Catholicism. And he says like 50-70% of Muslims that he knows that are converting, he says the majority of them are converting due to supernatural visions from God, or it's either Jesus Christ or an angel. And he says explicitly, he says, yeah, I know this guy, he has this other vision. He's like, for me, Jesus appeared to me as he was crucified, and he appeared to me and I had no argument. He's like, I couldn't say anything against that. Like, and I had just finished this part on about Blessed Raymond, where his conversion and the start of his entire missionary focus to help convert the Muslims. And then here it is, 800 years later, I'm watching a video of a modern day Muslim who converts to Christianity because Jesus Christ appears to him as crucified. And so, I mean, I immediately texted my boss and I was like, oh, you got to read this book. It was absolutely, amazing to see, this kind of, or at least in my mind, in my perspective, this kind of real life, I think, intervention of Blessed Raymond, that is happening today. He is interceding for the conversion of Muslims today.
Yeah, it is amazing, and to know that God, he still works in this way at times, like he did with Saul of Tarsus to St. Paul. God can do these extraordinary things, obviously. So if somebody gets a supernatural grace, a vision like that, then clearly the thing to do would be to repent and believe. There should be no question about it. And yet, at the same time, again, this is our role in the ordinary sense, is that as evangelizers, what do we want to do in sharing the faith? We want to remind people of Christ crucified, of Jesus who has laid down his life in love for them, and that he is present to them, and that he demands an answer from them. And we might be able to kind of plant that seed, that vision in their mind, to which they're called to respond. So something for us to maybe participate with God's grace in that way. But for Blessed Ramon, he was off and running, and then he asked the next logical question, which is, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to serve him? What do you want from me, God? What's most pleasing to God and most useful to humanity, he asked. And this is where he gets into thinking that, there's no better way to serve Christ in this time than to commit to the conversion of the Saracens, the Muslims. And it says at that time, the Saracens virtually surrounded the whole of Christendom and even threatened invasion and conquest in many parts. So he resolved to apply himself to this great task, even to the point of giving up his very life to achieve it, all for the love and honor of Jesus Christ. And it's really threefold what he ends up making as his intention in the way that he's going to go forth and serve the Lord. He says, first, the devotion of all of his efforts and powers, even his very life itself, committing himself heart and soul to this service and to the conversion of the Saracens to the Christian faith. And then second, to write a book that would infallibly refute the errors of non-believers and display the truths of the Catholic faith. And then third, the establishment of a monastery or college to provide Christian missionaries with instruction in the Arabic and other non-European languages. So this is what he sets out to do. And the first thing he really fulfills it, going full blast into putting all of his efforts and powers to the conversion of the Saracens. The second thing, he wrote more than one book that is refuting errors and bringing forth truth. I mean, he wrote hundreds of books and lectured on them. And so he did a very good job there. And he was faithful to the third in attempting to establish a monastery or college. He writes here that the idea occurred to him to approach the Pope, various Christian kings and princes throughout Europe to solicit their aid and support in establishing a kind of monastery or college. Later in the book, it makes clear that sadly no king or Pope or the College of Cardinals ever said yes to him, his repeated efforts to get them on board. And so that's kind of a sad result, but he did his part. He was faithful to the call it's up to other people to be faithful to their call and to answer rightly as they're called to. And sadly, it seems like in this particular aspect of the mission, that did not happen for him. But you wonder, what are the good fruits that came forth just in his fidelity? For us, in reading this book, those fruits are there to say, yes, remain faithful regardless of what anybody else does. We're called to remain faithful, and his witness of perseverance here, I think, is incredibly inspiring. Jason, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think, especially today, again, with the rise of Islam, he should be the saint we go to, not only because of the modern parallels that we can see with people converting, but he is interceding for. He is still working. Even he's in heaven. He is still working for the conversion of Muslims. I wholeheartedly believe that, and I think we can see that. And to go back to like the quote of Tertullian, right? The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the faith. The fact that he was not only working for the conversion of Muslims, but also that he was a martyr, makes him even more appropriate, because many Muslims that do convert to Christianity, they will face martyrdom, especially if they're in particular countries that have zero tolerance for Christianity or something like that. If they convert, they will face martyrdom, and so he is a perfect blessed for us to pray to. But also, the understanding that to kind of borrow a phrase from Cardinal Newman, right? We are, God has given us some definitive purpose. We may not know what that is in this life, but we'll be told of it in the next. And so even if we, I think, have an experience, an evangelization experience, maybe like Blessed Ramon, where we don't see success. What is that? We don't see the conversions like we thought, right? We leave everything to God. We give it all to God for His greater glory and honor, and we give it to Our Lady, and we allow them to work within their divine plan. It's not my plan, it's God's plan. We have a role to play in that, and it's our job to be faithful. Blessed Raymond was faithful in everything he did. He was faithful in his preaching, in his care, and in his mission. That's all that God asks. He doesn't, Cardinal Ratzinger once said, success is not one of the names of God. We're called to be faithful. And so we can see in the life of Blessed Ramon Llull that he was faithful to God. So I think for us as evangelizers, he should be the blessed that we call upon to intercede for us. And for those that are converting from Islam to Christianity, he should be the one that they call on to intercede for them, because he understood what martyrdom was, and he understood kind of the desire to give everything to God in this way.
Yeah. I mean, everything is a gift, and no one should know that better than faithful Catholics, to know that, but for the grace of God go I, to be very grateful that we understand, and yet we still fail in many ways as we strive to grow in grace and virtue, and so we just keep coming back to, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner, and help me to do your holy will. And whatever moment you give me, whatever breath you continue to give me in this life, help me to really serve you faithfully and for your glory, and to participate faithfully in the grace that you give, and to know, what is that particular mission that each of us is called to pray for some clarity for us, as much as we can know. Oftentimes, our Lord doesn't work with us in the same particular way. That's what is so interesting about the lives of the saints. There are so many things that are universal. Love of Our Our Lady and love of the Holy Eucharist, the sacramental life, so much that is, you're going to find it in every life of every saint you read. But also you're always going to find things that are very unique. And one of the unique things here with Blessed Raymond is that he was given this grace at his conversion to know pretty quickly exactly what he was to focus on for the rest of his life in the way that he was called to serve the Lord. For us, it might not be so clear, and if that's the case, well, even that is a gift, that we can walk with our Lord faithfully and striving to do what he puts before us this day, and enter into whatever particular call he has us. We know whatever our vocation is, that for sure is our call, and to be faithful to that. Anybody who's entrusted to our care as parents, as spouses, to love our spouse, to love and form our children well, we know that this is the way that we are called to serve the Lord, and he's going to have other things for us as well, so to be on the lookout for that. Lord, what do you want me to do? But people were against Blessed Ramon as well, pretty severely. He was stabbed at one point by a servant in the chest, attempting to kill him. He was able to hold it off, and he survived the wound. At another time, his servants poisoned him, and he was able to survive that as well. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Jason Gale of Tan Books, tanbooks.com. They put out this great little book, The Memoirs of Blessed Ramon Llull. We're talking about that today. You can get it at tanbooks.com. Final segment here. And, of course, the memoirs that Blessed Raymond himself wrote, they conclude before his martyrdom. He can't obviously write about his own martyrdom. And there is some, I guess, question out there about it. There are some biographers who seem to be uncertain about his martyrdom. And I guess the church has not officially declared him a martyr. But they included in this book from Tan Books that we do have an excerpt from a biography of Ramon written by a Charles de Beauvels, a celebrated French mathematician, philosopher, and theologian of the 15th and 16th centuries. So I would think this is certainly pretty solid stuff to take account of. And he gives a pretty a good description here of the martyrdom of Blessed Ramon, which I don't think he would just make up. It seems legit to me. And he says, this is how he describes it. He says that by now Ramon was drawing close to the end of his life. In the body, he was an old man. He died in his 80s. It says, though, but in his soul, he remained vigorous. And drawing from this strength of soul, he found an inexhaustible resource of energy. He left once more for Tunisia to renew his missionary work there. When he arrived, he was recognized immediately by the local inhabitants, who recalled that he had been expelled from their country under pain of death many years earlier. Without mercy, he was stoned to death, and his dead body left near the port of the city, covered in the rocks which had killed him. And then the next night, according to the will of God, certain merchants from his hometown, they arrive by ship, and they see from a distance this immense pyramid of light shining brilliantly in the night sky. They find the source of this light, and they discover that it's originating from this pile of rocks that they find by the port. So they investigate, they remove the stones, and they discover the lifeless body of the man of God underneath. They recognize him as their compatriot Ramon Llull, and then they take his mortal remains upon the ship, return him to the island he's from, and they fittingly and reverently bury him. And there it says his body remains to this very day, with a multitude of miracles occurring at the site of his tomb. Now, I've not researched any of that. If we do have that spot and you can go visit it on pilgrimage, it may be. I'm not sure. I haven't done the research on it. Jason, anything? Are you aware of that burial site? Does that exist? Anything else you want to share with us?
Yeah, that I don't know. I'll have to look into that. Again, I'm with you. Like when this book was brought to us, I was like, who's Ramon Llull? So he's fairly new to me, but I thoroughly enjoyed reading through these memoirs. And one of the things I really enjoyed, especially because especially if your audience, if you talk to people and you're trying to help explain the faith, he's got great parts in here, especially like you had mentioned before, on the Trinity, where he's trying to explain the Trinity to the Muslims. And because, for us as Catholics, it's a central belief of our faith. Without the Trinity, everything else kind of falls to the ground. But he has this beautiful tactic that I think is helpful today, and that's when you're speaking with somebody, you have to begin with something in common. And so for him, you can't, so while he does stand up and says, your religion is false, mine is not, he also begins with, you believe that God is perfectly good, right? And they say, yes, God is perfect. He is indeed so. And then he has this beautiful way of putting like a hook there, where he says, goodness is greater in its outpouring than in its remaining inert. And this is how he gets to the Trinity, that goodness has the ability, it almost requires itself to spread, to be shared. And this is why there's three persons in one God. Because God is good, God cannot remain solitary. And so he has this beautiful way of again, laying out logically, begin with something I have in common with the person in front of me, in this case, the goodness of God. Now, where do I want to take them? I want to take them to the Trinity. Okay, what is that hook? What is that middle piece that I need to explain? What is the main point that needs to be there? It's that goodness is greater in its outpouring. And this is why the Father gives everything he has to the Son, and the Son everything back to the Father. And the love that exists between the two is so real that is a real person, the Holy Spirit. And thus we have the Trinity. And so I think for your listeners, to me, that was one of the most beautiful parts of the book. So not just his life as a beautiful example of a faithful witness to God, even in the faith of what we would consider failures. He remained faithful to God and steadfast in his mission. And also he was loving. He respected the people that he spoke to, but he proclaimed Jesus Christ boldly. Yes, it led to his death. And we have to have that same courage today, which is it's difficult. It's difficult for us to say, am I willing to sacrifice my job, my career, my status for Jesus Christ? It would be difficult for us to say that. Blessed Ramon is a absolute beautiful example of how to live that way, even if it does lead to our own martyrdom. But I think also in this case, like you said, there's been so many miracles that have been, at least the numbers have been reported. I haven't done the research to figure out what they all are, but his work continues, interceding for us in heaven.
Yes, yeah, well said. And he, at one point when he did approach the Holy Father, Pope Clement V at the time, this was right before an ecumenical council in 1311 was about to take place, the Council of Vienne, I guess, and he's trying to be present at this council to advance his three proposals or requests for strengthening and the reparation of the true faith. And again, he doesn't find the success that he would hope for there, but he keeps putting in the effort. He remains faithful and persevering. I just think that's such a great witness for us, and to trust God with that. If God is calling us to do something, to persist in it until he says no more, right? And to follow God's grace, to follow what he's calling us to do, and not, regardless of what the outcome is, not pin everything on the outcome. The outcome is us being faithful and participating with God's grace. And I just think that's very important to take away, I think, from the life of any saint, but we see it here very clearly in the life of Blessed Ramon. And then one last thing too, when he was evangelizing, he also said this at one point. He said, if you are prepared to take take just a few days to converse with me in a spirit of tranquility and calm, I will convince you, right? So he's saying, give me a little bit of time. Let's remain calm. If you can commit to being calm and peaceful in talking with me, I will convince you. I have a gift to give you here. I will convince you if you give me some time and we can just have a calm, peaceful time of it. I think that's kind of an interesting way to present things as well. Anything else? Any final things that you want to share with us here today, Jason?
Oh, yeah. I think that's a great point you made about kind of having that patience. You see that in the life of, even like St. Dominic, who stayed up overnight just talking to the innkeeper, just because that love that he wanted to share, and to understand every soul is precious in the eyes of God, and every soul is at risk. We have to have that urgency to want to be able to preach the gospel with truth and charity, and with the gentleness in this way, but also with the boldness. Don't be afraid to say the hard things, but be there to back them up. Don't just say them and run. Be there, spend the time with the people.
Yes, very good. Jason Gale, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it. tanbooks.com. That's where you can get it. The Memoirs of Blessed Ramon Llull, the first missionary martyr to the Muslims. tanbooks.com. God bless you all.